The air inside La Serenissima was heavy with old money and imported truffle oil, that peculiar scent of power wrapped in candle smoke. For 24-year-old Anna Brooks, it mostly smelled like tired feet and another rent bill she couldn't pay. Every flick of a lighter, every pop of a champagne cork, was another reminder that she didn't belong here, not among the city's untouchables, men who wore loyalty like silk and betrayal like cologne. Her black shirt and cobalt vest marked her as invisible, one of the restaurant's many ghosts gliding between tables to keep the illusion alive. But La Serenissima wasn't a restaurant. It was a stage. And tonight, the main act had just walked in. Vincent Moretti. Even if you didn't know the name, you'd feel it. The way conversations softened when he entered. The way the maitre d's spine straightened, his voice trembling just slightly. Moretti was 50, maybe pushing it, but he carried his age like armor, silver hair slicked back, cufflinks that caught the light like small promises. The tattoos beneath his cuffs weren't fashion, they were lineage. The Moretti crest inked in shadow and silence. He wasn't just a man. He was Manhattan's myth in a tailored suit, the quiet storm behind half the city's deals and debts. And tonight, he sat in her section. Anna studied her tray as she approached, each step measured, each breath controlled. Her reflection ghosted across the wine glasses. She wondered if he could see the flicker of nerves behind her calm mask. He didn't look at her when he spoke. Men like Moretti rarely looked at the help. "Bring the 09 Barolo," he said to the air. His voice was low, cultured, dangerous, the kind of sound that could command or comfort with the same tone. "Yes, sir." Inside, Anna felt the familiar swirl of resentment and survival. She should have been anywhere but here, maybe behind a desk, maybe still dreaming about the father she'd lost. But dreams didn't pay hospital bills or erase debt. As she poured the wine, Moretti's tone changed. It grew warmer, almost nostalgic. "Gentlemen," he said, sliding a leather-bound ledger across the white tablecloth. "This is where it all began. The first account book of the Moretti family. My father's handwriting, my uncle's signatures. Every dollar that built this city." The men around him leaned in reverently. The ledger was thick, bound in deep brown leather that caught the golden chandelier light. Its pages, yellowed and delicate, whispered history. But for Anna, it whispered something else. Her eyes caught the bottom corner of one open page. Her breath hitched. The looping script, elegant and slanted, curved exactly the way she remembered tracing on math homework. J. Brooks. Her world stopped. It couldn't be. It couldn't. She'd seen that signature 1,000 times on birthday cards, permission slips, the back of old bills her mother never threw away. Her father's name. The man who had vanished 14 years ago without a trace. The hum of the restaurant faded. The clinking glasses blurred. Her heartbeat became the only sound. She stared at the ledger, at the faint smudge of ink that matched the way he used to press too hard when he signed. A tremor of disbelief ran through her hand as she set down the wine bottle. Her voice emerged before she could stop it. "Sir." Moretti glanced up, mildly annoyed. "Yes." Anna's throat went dry, but she didn't look away. "That signature," she whispered. "That's my dad's." For a heartbeat, the world forgot to breathe. Vincent Moretti froze. His hand, halfway to his glass, stopped midair. His expression, that stone-faced calm of a man who'd seen everything fractured. The crystal slipped from his fingers, tumbling in slow motion before shattering against the marble floor. The sound cracked through the restaurant like a gunshot. Every head turned. But neither Anna nor Vincent moved. His eyes, cold gray steel seconds ago, were now wide with something closer to fear. He stared at her, unblinking, his lips parting as if speaking to a ghost. "Annie," he whispered. And for the first time in years, Anna felt the ground tilt beneath her. The restaurant's noise had returned, but the world still felt muted. Anna stood in the echo of shattered crystal, her heart pounding as if the floor beneath her might give way. Vincent Moretti's stare had been something between recognition and guilt, a flicker too human for the legend he was. Her name on his lips, Annie, was an old ghost dragged into fluorescent light. And yet, by the time she blinked, he had already risen, the mask of power sliding back into place like armor. "Clean that up," he said to no one in particular, his voice sharp, brittle, and trembling just enough to betray him. Then he left. Just like that. A storm bottled behind his suit and tie, his glass still bleeding across the white linen. Anna's coworker, Tasha, nudged her from behind, whispering, "What the hell was that? You trying to get yourself fired?" Anna said nothing. She only stared at the doorway where he'd vanished, her reflection staring back at her from the polished silver. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that signature burned into the paper, her father's looping J, the deliberate flourish that made his name look alive. 14 years of silence clawed their way out of the dark. Her father's laughter, his warm hand guiding hers over a ledger, teaching her how to add long columns by rhythm. Numbers have a beat, Annie. The same beat she heard now, echoing behind her ribs like a warning. The truth was alive, and it wanted out. In 2009, when the world still felt safe, Jonathan Brooks had been a quiet man. An accountant with a disarming smile, a man who balanced mob money by day and built model airplanes with his daughter by night. The kind of man who paid attention to details, the weight of paper, the clean edges of a ledger line, the silence between heartbeats. Then one morning, he didn't come home. His car was found 2 miles from the Hudson, engine still warm. The police called it suicide. His wife called it a lie. Anna was 10. Old enough to understand loss, too young to question power. Her mother never let her attend the funeral. "There's no body," she'd whispered, eyes red but voice sharp. "And there are people who don't need us asking why." From that night forward, silence became their religion. Questions were sins. Secrets were survival. Anna grew up learning to smile small, speak less, and look away from shadows that lingered too long at the door. After her mother's death 2 years ago, Anna had promised herself she'd let the past stay buried. But Vincent Moretti had cracked the coffin open. His reaction wasn't surprise, it was fear. And fear in a man like him meant something real. She sat on her couch, staring at the ceiling of her one-bedroom apartment, her uniform still on, her fingers trembling over her phone. Never trust VM. Her mother's warning echoed like prophecy. The next morning, exhaustion clung to her like smoke. Tasha cornered her in the staff locker room, whispering as she tied her apron. "You okay, girl? That guy last night, he's trouble. You don't mess with people like that." Anna nodded, but her mind was miles away. She'd replayed his whisper, Annie, over and over until she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. Almost. But denial didn't erase ink, and her father's name was written in Moretti's book. After her shift, Anna took the long route home through the Lower East Side, where the ghosts of her childhood still lingered in graffiti and rust. Her mother's apartment had always been spotless, but the tiny storage closet above the bedroom had remained sealed. The key had hung on a chain inside a porcelain cup, its presence both obvious and forbidden. That night, Anna climbed the creaking step stool and turned the lock for the first time. The hinges moaned like something waking up. Inside was a single wooden box, dark with age, wrapped in a silk scarf. Dust coated the lid, and the scent of lavender clung faintly to it, her mother's perfume. Anna carried it to the kitchen table, heart pounding, hands shaking. The latch gave way easily, as if it had been waiting for her. Inside lay old letters bound with twine, a flash drive, and a folded note on yellowed stationery that smelled faintly of smoke. She unfolded it slowly. 3 words, written in her mother's looping script. Never trust VM. The air left her lungs. Beneath the note, she found a small stack of envelopes addressed to JB and dated the year before he vanished. The handwriting wasn't her father's, it was sharper, heavier, familiar in its arrogance. She compared the signature on one of the letters to the one on the restaurant receipt she'd brought home. It matched. Vincent Moretti had been writing to her father. They hadn't just known each other, they'd worked together. Anna plugged the flash drive into her old laptop, half expecting it to be empty. It wasn't. Dozens of files appeared in neat rows, labeled with sterile codes, INV09 records, R transfers, B01 clearing. And then, at the very bottom, one that froze her blood. Safe House Protocol, Brooks. The file was encrypted. A password prompt blinked at her, a silent challenge. She stared at it until her eyes burned. Her father's handwriting, Moretti's letters, the ledger, all of it was pointing toward one impossible truth. She closed her laptop and stared at the wall, the old paint peeling like paper memories. Her mother's voice came back to her soft, trembling, the night after the funeral. They think they own everything. Even death. Anna hadn't understood then, but she did now. Her father hadn't drowned. He'd been swallowed. Hidden by men who thought silence was loyalty and truth was treason. She felt anger coil in her chest like a fuse waiting for flame. For 2 days, she went through the motions at work, moving like an echo. Vincent Moretti didn't return to the restaurant, though whispers about him did. The waiters talked about his empire, real estate, construction, laundering fronts disguised as charities. His name was iron in the city's blood. But when Anna looked at the skyline, she saw it differently now, not towers of power, but monuments built on the bones of men like her father. She spent the next weekend in the public library, the smell of paper and ink both comforting and cruel. Every search brought her closer to a version of Moretti's empire most people pretended not to see. 1998. IRS audit mysteriously dropped. 2003. Accountant Jonathan Brooks hired by Moretti Financial Group. 2009. Brooks presumed dead after financial irregularities uncovered. Her father hadn't just been an employee, he'd been a liability. But liabilities didn't vanish without someone pulling the strings. One headline caught her attention: 5 families restructure after internal scandal, Vincent Moretti promoted to Don. The date matched the week her father disappeared. Coincidence was too generous a word. Anna printed the article, folded it into her jacket, and stepped out into the evening rain. Her reflection in the wet pavement looked like her mother, eyes haunted, lips pressed into silence. Silence had protected them once, but now it was killing her. That night, she returned to the box and reread the letters. They spoke of numbers and promises, of debts owed and favors buried. But the last one chilled her. If it comes to it, I'll move him myself. The board doesn't need to know. Move him. Not kill him. Move. Anna read the line again and again until the words blurred into tears. If Moretti had moved her father, then he was still alive somewhere. The thought hit her like oxygen and poison all at once. But beneath the spark of hope was something darker. If her father had been hidden, why had her mother lived in fear all these years? Why the warning? Why tell her never to trust the man who might have saved him? The questions looped endlessly until they became unbearable noise. She opened the laptop again, staring at the encrypted file. Somewhere in that digital lockbox was the truth, buried behind the password only her father could have known. She tried his old combinations, her birthday, her mother's name, the street they'd lived on. Nothing worked. The screen blinked with quiet defiance. Finally, in frustration, she typed the one thing he used to whisper when teaching her numbers. Beat. The password field froze, then flickered. Access granted. The folder opened like a wound. Inside were scanned documents, coordinates, and a single note typed in all caps: confidential. Brooks' safe house terminated. Transfer to secondary hold, upstate. Do not disclose to D'Angelo or board. Orders, VM. The room spun. Vincent Moretti hadn't just known what happened, he had ordered it. Safe house. Transfer. Her father wasn't dead. He'd been disappeared. Anna sat back, trembling. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, mechanical and cold. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, but they sounded far away, like echoes from another life. She realized she was gripping the edges of the table so hard her knuckles had gone white. The note was dated 6 months after her father's supposed death. Every truth she'd lived by, every memory her mother built, had been a carefully constructed lie. In the dark of her apartment, the laptop screen glowed like a confession. Never trust VM. Her mother's voice again, threaded through her mind. But if Vincent Moretti was her enemy, why had he looked at her like that? Why had he whispered her childhood name as if it hurt to say it? Anna's pulse quickened. The only way to know was to confront the man who had rewritten her life. She closed the laptop, slid the flash drive into her pocket, and whispered to the empty room, "No more silence." The rain outside thickened, washing the city in silver streaks. Somewhere across town, Vincent Moretti was likely sitting in one of his high-rise offices, surrounded by men who'd kill for him, men who didn't bleed fear the way she did. But he'd made one mistake. He'd shown her proof. And proof was louder than any threat. Anna looked down at the flash drive in her hand, small, unassuming, but carrying a decade of buried truth. Somewhere in its code lay the answer to everything. She gathered the documents, the letters, and her mother's note into a folder and tucked it beneath her coat. Tomorrow, she'd start digging into those coordinates. Tonight, she would let the storm outside match the one rising in her chest. Her reflection in the window looked different now, not small or frightened, but sharpened by resolve. Silence had protected her once, but tonight she understood what her mother never could. Silence was a lie. And the truth, once spoken, would burn everything down. The next morning, La Serenissima glowed with the illusion of calm. Polished silverware, pristine linens, and chandeliers reflected light like nothing had happened 2 nights before. But Anna knew better. The air itself felt different, denser, aware. She could feel the echo of the moment Vincent Moretti's glass shattered, the silence that followed, and the way his eyes had looked at her not with anger, but recognition. She'd told herself she wouldn't go back. That walking away was safer, saner, smarter. But curiosity was no longer curiosity, it was survival. The encrypted files on her laptop, the old letters in her mother's box, all pointed to one man. And now he was sitting in his usual booth, surrounded by bodyguards dressed like businessmen, sipping espresso as if he hadn't been haunted by a ghost in a waitress's uniform. Anna waited until the lunch crowd thinned. She carried a tray of empty glasses past his table, her pulse thundering in her ears. His gaze flicked toward her but didn't linger, like he was trying not to see her. It was the deliberate avoidance that gave him away. "Mr. Moretti," she said quietly, stopping by his chair. The men beside him froze mid-conversation. "We need to talk." Vincent's expression didn't shift. He set his cup down with surgical precision, eyes fixed on the steam rising from it. "I don't talk to staff about business." His tone was soft, but undercut with authority. Anna didn't flinch. "This isn't business," she replied, voice steady. "It's about my father." For the briefest flicker of a second, his jaw tightened, just enough for her to know she'd struck something alive beneath that marble calm. He leaned back, exhaling slowly through his nose, the silver glint in his hair catching the light. "I think you're mistaken," he said, his composure sliding back into place. "I don't know your father." Anna's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "Jonathan Brooks. Accountant. 2009. Disappeared after working for a man named Vincent Moretti." His espresso spoon clinked softly against the saucer. For a heartbeat, she thought he might lie again, but then he said something that made her blood freeze. "Watch your tone, Anna Marie." The name hit her like a slap. Her middle name. No one had called her that since she was a child, not even her mother. She blinked, stunned, her breath catching halfway through a reply. "How do you know that?" she demanded. Vincent's gaze lifted finally, locking onto hers with quiet intensity. "You should leave this alone," he said softly. "Curiosity is a knife. It cuts both ways." He stood and signaled to his men, who rose in unison. Anna stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "You can't keep pretending," she hissed. "I found your letters. I found his files. I know you lied about him." His expression hardened, but his voice remained calm. "If you value what's left of your life, you'll stop digging." "You're scared," she said, the realization blooming in her chest. "You saw me that night, and you flinched." The words hung between them, sharper than glass. His eyes darkened, not with rage, but memory. For the first time, Vincent Moretti looked his age. "There are things worse than fear, Anna," he murmured. "Things your father understood far too late." He brushed past her, but she followed, her steps quick and unrelenting. "Then tell me the truth," she pressed. "Tell me what happened to him." He didn't respond. Instead, he walked through the double doors at the back of the dining room, the entrance to the private wine cellar. The staff avoided that hallway. It was reserved for men like him, men who did business in whispers. Anna hesitated only a moment before slipping after him, her shoes silent on the marble floor. The cellar was dim and cold, the air thick with oak and dust. Rows of bottles gleamed under amber lights, and at the far end stood Moretti, one hand resting on a shelf like he needed it for balance. "I don't know what you think you want to find," he said without turning. "But if you keep looking, you'll get people killed." His voice carried the weight of confession, the edges of exhaustion hidden beneath the steel. Anna took another step forward, her heart hammering. "Then at least tell me why my father's name is in your ledger," she said. "Tell me why you looked at me like you'd seen a ghost." He turned slowly, eyes shadowed. "Because I have." The silence that followed was so complete, Anna could hear the faint hum of the cooling system. Vincent's voice was lower now, stripped of command. "Jonathan Brooks worked for me," he said. "He was one of the best accountants I ever had, honest, brilliant, too decent for the world he was in. He kept my books clean when others wanted to dirty them. But decency," he added with a sigh, "is a dangerous thing in my line of work." Anna's throat tightened. Then why did he disappear? Vincent hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck as if the motion could erase something he didn't want to say. "Because he found out too much," he said finally. "About money that wasn't supposed to exist. About names that weren't supposed to be spoken." He paused. "When the 5 families began to suspect betrayal, your father became their favorite target." Anna's voice broke the stillness. "And you, what did you do?" He met her eyes. "I hit him." For a moment, neither spoke. The gravity of his words pulled the air from the room. "I moved him out of the city," Vincent continued. "Gave him a new name, a safe place. I told the families he was dead, and they believed me." His tone hardened. "But things went wrong. Someone found out. The board doesn't forgive lies." Anna's hands shook as she gripped the edge of a wine rack. "Where did you send him?" she asked. "If you hit him, then you know where he is." Vincent looked away, jaw tightening. "You don't want to go looking where the dead rest, Anna," he said quietly. "Sometimes mercy looks like disappearance." His eyes flicked back to hers, and, for an instant, she saw something buried beneath the control remorse. She took a step closer, her voice trembling but fierce. "He's not dead, is he?" He didn't answer. "You said mercy, not death," she pressed. "You said you moved him." Vincent's silence was confirmation enough. Anna's pulse quickened. "Then tell me where." Vincent's expression softened just slightly, a trace of sorrow ghosting across it. "You remind me of him," he said. "He never knew when to stop either." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and slid it across a nearby table. "Find Rudy Moretti," he said. "He'll tell you the rest, if he's still alive." Anna stared at the paper but didn't reach for it. "Who is he?" she asked. Vincent smiled faintly, a tired, bitter curve. "My cousin," he said. "And the last man who saw your father breathing." Anna's breath caught. "Why are you helping me?" Vincent's answer came softly, almost a whisper. "Because ghosts deserve closure." He turned away, his figure dissolving into shadow as he walked down the aisle of wine racks, his footsteps fading until there was only the hum of cold air again. The folded paper lay between them like a pact. Anna picked it up. The name Rudy Moretti was scrawled across it, followed by a phone number. She tucked it into her apron and stood there for a long time, the silence pressing in. Her hands smelled faintly of cork and oak, but beneath it, she could smell something else, truth, freshly disturbed and dangerous. Vincent's words echoed in her mind. "You don't want to go looking where the dead rest." But she already knew it was too late for warnings. Curiosity wasn't a knife anymore, it was a promise. That night, she sat at her kitchen table with the phone number written on the back of an old receipt. The city outside her window buzzed and pulsed like a living thing, oblivious to the storm she was about to call down. She didn't know if Rudy Moretti was friend or foe, only that his name was now stitched into the fabric of her father's story. She dialed the first 3 digits, paused, and looked at her reflection in the glass. "You wanted answers, Dad," she whispered. "I'm coming for them." The call didn't go through. The line cut with static, the sound distant and broken, like a ghost caught between signals. She stared at the phone in silence, then glanced toward the wooden box on her counter, the letters, the files, her mother's warning. Never trust VM. Maybe she never had. Maybe she was just walking the same road her father once did. But if Vincent Moretti thought fear would stop her, he'd forgotten one thing. She'd grown up in the silence he'd created, and silence no longer scared her. The night deepened. Somewhere a siren wailed and faded into the distance. Anna looked down at the number again, her pulse steady now, her decision made. She would find Rudy. She would find her father. And if she had to drag the ghosts of the Moretti family into the light to do it, then so be it. The truth was no longer buried, it was waiting. What would you do if the man who held all the answers about your missing parent was also the one who once helped hide them? Would you trust him or expose him? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter of Anna's story, where the hunt for her father begins and the truth turns deadly. The number Vincent gave her rang 3 times, then disconnected. Anna tried again, this time from a burner phone she picked up that morning, just in case. Same result. Just as she was about to hang up, a gruff voice crackled through, distorted by static and suspicion. "Who is this?" She hesitated, then answered with a name she wasn't sure would open doors or paint a target on her back. Anna Brooks. Jonathan's daughter. The silence that followed was long enough to make her think he'd hung up. Wrong number, the voice snapped. The line went dead. But Anna wasn't done. She called again. "I'm not looking for trouble. I'm just looking for the truth." Another beat of silence. Then, "You don't know what truth costs, girl." The voice on the other end sounded older than she expected, gravel layered with smoke and time. "If you're smart, you'll bury this." "I tried," she said, her voice low but unshaking. "But your cousin dropped the shovel. That got his attention." "Vincent sent you?" Anna could practically hear Rudy grinding his teeth. "He really wants me dead, doesn't he?" "No," she said. "He told me you'd tell me the rest if you were still alive." A pause. Then a quiet, reluctant exhale. "Meet me in 3 hours. No tales. No phones. Bring nothing but your father's name." He rattled off an address in rural Pennsylvania and hung up. The drive was long and tense. Anna borrowed a friend's car, someone who didn't ask questions, and followed the winding roads out past the city's reach. As she left the skyline behind, the air seemed to thicken with secrecy. By the time she pulled into the gravel driveway of a cabin buried deep in the woods, the sun was hanging low and the shadows felt like watchers. The cabin itself looked forgotten, peeling paint, crooked porch, a satellite dish hanging by a single rusted screw. He answered the door with a shotgun. "Hands where I can see 'em." Anna raised her arms slowly, her breath caught in her throat. "Rudy Moretti?" she asked. He was wiry, gray-stubbled, and his eyes looked like they hadn't trusted anything in a decade. "You look like him," he said, lowering the barrel. "That same look in your eye. Always 2 seconds from a bad decision." The inside of the cabin was cluttered and dark. Paper maps covered the table. Old files, newspaper clippings, and photographs coated with dust were pinned across one wall. A corkboard sat in the corner, filled with red string and faded mugshots. "I'm not a conspiracy nut," Rudy grumbled, pouring himself whiskey without offering her any. "But after what they did to me and your old man, you start needing the truth where you can see it." Anna stepped toward the table. "You knew him?" Rudy scoffed. "Knew him? I worked beside him. Your father was too good at his job. Honest. Clean. He thought he could launder numbers without laundering his soul." He downed the whiskey in one motion. It made him a threat. She listened in silence as he lit a cigarette with fingers that trembled more from memory than age. "He started spotting things," Rudy said. "Offshore accounts that didn't balance. Names that didn't belong in the books. Then he did something real stupid." Anna's heart thudded. "What?" Rudy glanced at her. "He told Vincent." Anna swallowed the lump in her throat. "I thought Vincent protected him." "He did," Rudy said. "At first. Tried to shield him from the board." Anna narrowed her eyes. "The board?" Rudy chuckled bitterly. "You think the 5 families run New York? They're the face. The board is the brain. A dozen men who keep their hands clean while the city bleeds." Rudy walked to the window and looked out into the woods like he expected them to answer. Your dad started feeding numbers to the feds. Quietly. Nothing traceable. Vincent found out, lost his mind, but then tried to help him disappear. The problem was, you don't cross the board. He turned back to her. You especially don't hide something from them. Anna's voice barely rose above a whisper. So what happened? They sent cleaners, Rudy said, his voice hollow. Vincent staged Jonathan's death before they could get to him. Put him in a safe house, old property outside Syracuse. He paused. But someone talked. They found it. Vincent made a deal to keep him alive. Said he'd hand him over, but only if they didn't kill him. Anna's breath hitched. So where's he now? Rudy didn't answer. Instead, he pulled open a drawer and took out a torn sheet of paper. Last I saw him was 8 years ago, he said. They'd already sedated him. Made him forget things. Called it protective conditioning. He handed her the paper. This was slipped to me by one of the orderlies. Said your dad wrote it during a lucid spell. Anna unfolded the sheet, her hands trembling. It was yellowed, torn along one edge, and the handwriting was unmistakable. It was her father's. Slanted and clean, the way he used to write checks. I remember numbers. I forget faces. But I dream of her, Annie. If this gets out, tell her I didn't run. I tried to stay. Tears welled in her eyes. She ran her fingers over the ink like she could touch him through the page. Where was this? She asked. Rudy's eyes hardened. Private compound. Sanitarium turned black site. Run by the board under one of their shell companies. Where? She pressed. Name it. He shook his head. I don't have a name. Just coordinates. And a warning. Anna looked up. What kind of warning? Rudy leaned in, cigarette burning low between his fingers. If you go after him, they'll come after you. They don't bury mistakes. They erase them. His gaze darkened. And if Vincent gave you my name, then he's already made his choice. He knows they'll kill him for this. Anna swallowed hard, her resolve curling tighter in her chest. He said you were the only one who could tell me the rest. He's not wrong, Rudy muttered. But that doesn't mean you'll like what you hear. She folded the torn page carefully and slid it into her bag. I don't care. I just want to find my father. Rudy sighed, then pulled an old manila folder from beneath a stack of tax documents. Inside were blurry satellite photos, hand-drawn floor plans, and coded maps. These were leaked by a Fed who went missing 6 months later, he said. They call it the Pines. Officially, it's a recovery center. Unofficially, it's where they keep people who know too much and don't die on schedule. Anna flipped through the maps, absorbing everything. Is he still there? Rudy shrugged. If he's alive, that's where they'd keep him. Sedated. Hidden. Forgotten. He lit another cigarette. You really think you're ready for this? She didn't answer. Her silence was enough. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Rudy walked her out to the car. If you do this, he said, you'll have to burn every bridge behind you. There's no halfway. Anna met his gaze, her fingers brushing the torn paper in her coat. I never wanted bridges, she said. Just the truth. He gave her a nod, but his face was etched with warning. Then remember this, girl. Blood in the ledger don't wash out easy. She drove back to the city with the page clutched like a lifeline. The words played over and over in her head. I remember numbers. I forget faces. But I dream of her, Annie. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He'd tried to stay. And now it was her turn to bring him back. Somewhere in the static between memory and survival, her story was no longer about loss. It was about reclamation. And vengeance. And the kind of love that clawed its way out of sedation and silence just to whisper, I didn't run. The road to Grayridge Hill wound like a question Anna wasn't sure she wanted answered. Fog clung to the edges of the pines, and silence sat thick between her and Vincent in the black sedan. He hadn't said a word since they passed the last gas station 20 minutes ago, his fingers tapping an uneven rhythm on the steering wheel. Anna kept her gaze forward, resisting the urge to break the quiet. There was too much between them now for small talk to matter. Vincent had called that morning, his voice raw like it hadn't rested. I know where they kept him, he said, skipping any pretense. She had expected denial, maybe even silence again, but something in his voice had changed. Maybe it was the weight of the years. Maybe it was what Rudy's name stirred loose. The car crested a ridge and the house came into view, shrouded by overgrown trees and time. It sat like a forgotten relic, a sprawling stone villa with ivy choking its walls and shutters hanging limp from rusted hinges. "This used to belong to my uncle," Vincent muttered. Place was used for all kinds of things. Anna felt the shift in his tone, regret disguised as casual disdain. She stayed silent, her eyes locked on the crumbling archway ahead. They parked at the edge of the gravel, the car's engine ticking in the cold as they stepped out. The air smelled of wet wood and forgotten things. The front door gave way with a reluctant creak, revealing a grand hall cloaked in dust. Marble floors stretched beneath layers of grime, and a chandelier hung above them like a question mark suspended in shadow. Vincent didn't need to say anything, this place was steeped in ghosts. As they moved through the hall, Anna's boots crunched softly against debris, shards of glass, bits of fallen plaster. "They used to host meetings here," Vincent said, his voice echoing slightly. "Quiet ones. No phones, no ears. Just promises and threats." Anna glanced at him. "And my father was brought here?" Vincent didn't answer, but his silence screamed louder than any confession. They reached a library, its walls lined with towering shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling. Books were scattered like abandoned memories, most thick with mold and dust. Vincent paused near the fireplace and placed a hand on the mantel almost thoughtfully. "He was here once. When things got complicated." Anna turned, brows furrowing. "Complicated how?" Vincent exhaled. The board was getting nervous. He had too much data, too many patterns memorized. They wanted him silenced. "I tried to delay them, told them we needed time to scrub the ledgers clean." He hesitated. "But they don't do delays. They do removal." Anna ran her fingers along a row of books, then stopped at a leather-bound volume titled Balance and Blood. Something about the spine felt wrong. She pulled it, and a faint click echoed behind the shelf. Vincent turned. "What was that?" The wall beside the shelf gave a low groan, revealing a narrow seam in the stone. They looked at each other, both knowing what this meant. Together, they pushed the shelf aside. Behind it lay a shallow room, no more than 5 feet deep, with walls lined in concrete and lined with dust-covered filing cabinets. A small desk stood in the corner, its chair overturned, the air stale and undisturbed. Anna stepped inside first, heart pounding like it might punch through her chest. On the desk sat a cracked photo frame. She picked it up. Her breath caught. It was a picture of her, maybe 6 or 7 years old, sitting on a swing. Her father wasn't in the photo, but she remembered that day. Her mother had taken her to the park while it was empty. She looked up at Vincent, eyes wide. "How did this get here?" He didn't answer. In one of the drawers, she found notebooks, several of them, labeled in her father's handwriting. Ledger codes, observation notes, maps. But as she flipped through, she found something else. Notations in the margins, personal ones. "Annie's favorite cereal. Still wears the yellow jacket." Her stomach turned. "He was watching me." Vincent didn't flinch. "He wanted to make sure you were safe. He asked me to keep tabs. Just in case." Anna's voice shook. "So you did know where he was this whole time?" Vincent's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. It was the kind of silence that confirmed guilt. Then she found the list. It was folded into the back of one of the journals, written on thick, water-damaged paper. 5 names, all first initials only: M. Russo, P. Caldera, T. Bescari, L. Tallo, and A. Brooks. Every name was crossed out, except hers. "These are targets," she whispered. "Witnesses. Or leaks." Vincent's eyes scanned the page. The board's blacklist. Anyone too close to the truth. Anna stared at her own name. "Why am I still on it?" He looked at her, his voice flat. "Because you're still breathing." A faint click broke the tension, a soft, high-pitched sound. Both froze. It had come from the far wall, near the ceiling. Anna looked up and spotted it, tucked into a corner, blinking red. A motion sensor. "Someone's watching," Vincent muttered. He grabbed her arm. "We need to go. Now." They raced back through the library and into the hall, their footfalls echoing like alarm bells. Anna's mind raced. If this place was under surveillance, Whoever controlled it would already know they'd found the hidden room. And if this was still a board property, abandoned or not, there wouldn't be a delay in response. There would be consequences. Outside, the trees felt closer, darker. Vincent shoved open the car door and jammed the keys into the ignition. Get in. Anna barely had time to close her door before the tires spat gravel and the sedan peeled back onto the road. Neither spoke for several miles, the silence thick with realization. I saw my name, Anna finally said. On a list meant for people who disappear. Vincent's hands tightened on the wheel. I should have burned that place years ago. Anna turned to him. But you didn't. Why? He didn't look at her. Because part of me thought, maybe one day you'd need to see it. The sky was starting to dim by the time they hit the outskirts of the city. Streetlights flickered on like eyes reopening after sleep. Anna stared at the folder in her lap, the photo of herself as a child, the crossed-out names, the journals that felt like whispers from a man she'd only known in fragments. And somewhere in that stack of proof was a single truth burning brighter than the rest. Her father hadn't given up on her. He had watched from the shadows, waiting for the day she'd be ready. Now she was. If you discovered your life was being monitored for years by a loved one trying to protect you, would you feel comforted or betrayed? Let us know in the comments below, and hit subscribe to follow Anna as she begins unraveling the most dangerous part of her father's legacy. The shadows are watching, but so is the truth. The fire took less than 7 minutes to consume the upper floors of Vincent Moretti's penthouse. Witnesses said it lit up the night sky like a torch held over Manhattan's secrets. By the time first responders arrived, the top 2 stories had collapsed inward, glass and steel melted down into the bones of the building. Vincent survived only because he'd been in the elevator when the blast went off, returning from a late meeting. But survival came at a cost, his body bruised, lungs seared by smoke, and whatever illusion of safety he had left, gone. Anna stood behind the hospital glass, watching him through a haze of fluorescent light and antiseptic. His suit was gone, replaced by a pale gown and oxygen tubes snaking across his face. Still, even half-conscious, he looked dangerous, like a lion too wounded to pace, but still capable of killing. She clutched the file folder tighter in her arms, the one from Grayridge Hill, her name still circled in red. They had sent a message, and Vincent had nearly died to receive it. That same morning, she found the note shoved through the slot of her apartment door. No envelope. No signature. Just a single line on matte black paper, typed in clean, cold font. Ghosts should stay buried. She didn't need a return address. The board had been watching them since the moment she stepped into that house. And now they weren't watching, they were acting. By noon, she'd packed a duffel and checked out of her apartment. She didn't bother calling anyone. The fewer people who knew where she was, the better. By 2 p.m., she was standing in the hospital stairwell, waiting for Vincent to be discharged early under false papers and the help of an old contact from his cleaner days. You're not safe anymore, he rasped as they exited through the ambulance bay. They don't send fire unless they plan to finish the job. They drove for hours in silence. Vincent stretched out in the back seat of a nondescript SUV, face pale, shirt soaked in sweat. Anna gripped the wheel, her mind racing faster than the highway below. Somewhere along the route, he spoke again, softly, hoarsely. They wanted to bury your father, but I think they always meant to bury me too. She didn't answer, but her hands tightened around the wheel until her knuckles turned white. The safe house was a lakefront property in upstate New York, remote and empty, but still wired with old security systems Vincent had set up years ago. As they settled in, he leaned against the kitchen counter, nursing a glass of scotch like a lifeline. Anna sat across from him at the table, the folder between them. Tell me everything, she said. No more riddles. No more half-truths. He looked at her, his expression raw. You really want the truth? I earned it, she said. Vincent let the silence sit for a moment, then nodded slowly. Your father didn't just work for me. He saved me. His eyes dropped to the glass in his hand. I was spiraling back then, drinking too much, getting sloppy. Your mother, she was your father's anchor. But when she saw what the world was doing to him, what he was covering up for me, she stepped in. Anna's breath caught. What are you saying? Vincent met her eyes, voice graveled but steady. I loved her. The words were simple, but they sliced through the air like a confession soaked in blood. Not in the way he did, not with promises or plans, but in the way a dying man loves a shoreline. Quietly. Desperately. She begged me to protect him. Anna felt her world tilt slightly, the floor not so steady beneath her anymore. Did he know? I think so, Vincent said. We never spoke of it. He loved her too much to ask. I loved him too much to answer. His hands trembled slightly as he set the glass down. I didn't betray him, Anna. But I failed him. Her voice was barely above a whisper. How? He swallowed. I couldn't stop the board from taking him. And I couldn't stop myself from surviving it. She stared at him for a long moment, the weight of everything pressing down on her shoulders like lead. And now they want us both gone. Yes, he said. Because you're proof he didn't disappear quietly. And I'm the last loose end that remembers why. He stood, slower than usual, still recovering. We have to disappear again. No, Anna said. Her voice was steel. That's what they want. Vincent raised an eyebrow. You planning to fight the board with a file folder and a grudge? I'm planning to fight them with fire, she replied. And a name they can't erase. She stepped closer, her shadow falling across the file. Mine. Outside, the lake shimmered in the fading light, the wind whistling like a warning through the trees. Inside, Anna felt the moment crystallize, a line drawn in silence, the future splitting at her feet. She was done running. Done hiding. The truth had lived in shadows for too long. Vincent watched her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or pride. You don't know what they're capable of, he said. Neither do they, she shot back. They thought Jonathan Brooks would vanish quietly. He didn't. They thought I'd never find him. I did. She stared out the window, heart pounding. So, let's burn the board down. Vincent exhaled slowly, then reached for the burner phone on the counter. Then we're going to need help, he said. And we're going to need to move fast. Anna looked at him, then at the flame of the stove flickering gently in the dim kitchen. Good, she whispered. I'm done waiting. The storm began quietly. Not with bullets or blood, but with numbers. Vincent and Anna sat at the oak table of the lakeside safe house, the leather-bound ledger open between them like a wound that refused to close. Every page told a story in code, shell accounts, falsified charities, and silent transactions that bled through banks in Panama, Cyprus, and Milan. They hid everything here, Anna murmured, tracing the faint ink with her fingertips. My father didn't just balance books. He built a map. Vincent leaned back, exhaustion carving shadows under his eyes. He built a bomb, he said. We just need to light it. He slid his phone across the table, a list of names glowing on the screen. Old friends, he explained. Men who owe me or hate D'Angelo more than they fear him. Maybe both. Anna smiled faintly. You think loyalty still exists? Vincent's reply was dry. Not loyalty. Debt. They spent the next 48 hours buried in paper and silence. Anna decrypted her father's files one by one, using the same rhythm he once taught her as a child, counting beats, dividing patterns, finding order in chaos. Each algorithm cracked another layer, revealing more of the board's network. Offshore laundries disguised as tech firms. Private art auctions funding assassinations. Entire foundations built on ghosts. She could almost hear her father's voice guiding her through it, that steady calm that had once made the world make sense. Meanwhile, Vincent worked the phone like a chessboard. He called in favors owed from decades ago, men who had sworn they'd never pick up again. Some answered with silence, others with whispered curiosity. The king's losing his teeth, he told one of them. D'Angelo can't control the flow anymore. The reply came cold, then you'd better kill him before he grows new ones. By nightfall, Anna had pieced together the core of the operation. This ledger isn't just a record, she said. It's a weapon. My father hid a key inside the transactions. A loop. Vincent frowned. A loop. A feedback code, she explained. If we release the wrong numbers, the entire system will eat itself, accounts will link back to their owners. She met his gaze. It'll expose everyone on the board. Vincent was silent for a moment. You do that, you start a war. It's already started, she said. They firebombed your penthouse. They sent me death threats. This isn't defense anymore. This is justice. For a long moment, he just watched her, then nodded slowly. You sound like him, he said. Anna froze. My father. Vincent smiled faintly. No. The man he used to be before the fear. The first leak hit 3 days later. Anonymous accounts on the dark web released fragments of the ledger, names, partial transactions, shell companies tied to the D'Angelo estate. It spread like wildfire through the criminal underworld. Capos turned on capos, territories splintered, and whispers of betrayal replaced loyalty. The board tried to contain the panic, but paranoia was faster than control. Money was vanishing faster than they could hide it. D'Angelo's retaliation came swiftly. 2 of Vincent's contacts were found dead within 24 hours, their cars burned beyond recognition. He's bleeding, Vincent muttered, staring at the news report. And cornered animals don't die quiet. Anna didn't look away from her laptop. Then we keep the pressure on. She was decrypting a new set of files, her eyes red from lack of sleep. The glow from the screen painted her face in cold blue light. It was strange, Vincent thought, watching her. He'd seen killers lose themselves to vengeance before, but Anna's fire was different, controlled, sharp, like her father's mind reborn. She wasn't destroying for revenge. She was unbuilding for truth. He'd be proud of you, he said quietly. Anna didn't look up. He'd tell me to stop before I burned with it. Would you listen? He asked. She shook her head. Not this time. By the end of the week, the cracks in the board were visible even to outsiders. Meetings were canceled. Accounts frozen. Rumors spread that D'Angelo Costa had gone into hiding, moving his operations offshore. But power doesn't vanish, it shifts. And every whisper that reached Vincent's phone warned the same thing: he's hunting you. Vincent turned off the phone, tossed it onto the table, and poured another drink. We don't stop now, he said. We finish it. Anna found the final piece of the code at dawn. It was hidden in the margin of a scan page, a series of coordinates disguised as interest rates. He left this for me, she said. Look, see how the numbers match my birthday? Vincent leaned over, squinting. What is it? A trigger point, she said. If I send this string to the servers listed here, every laundering account linked to the board collapses. The world sees their empire in ruins. Vincent hesitated. You sure? She nodded. My father built it this way. He wanted a failsafe. He wanted protection, Vincent corrected. Not war. But Anna was already typing. You said it yourself. War's already here. With a final keystroke, the system came alive. Data surged through encrypted tunnels, igniting across continents. The board's secrets were bleeding into the world. Hours later, the response hit. The safe house alarms blared, motion sensors tripped, external lines cut. They found us, Vincent said, grabbing his gun from the counter. Anna shoved the laptop into her bag. We need to move. They escaped through the back door, sprinting toward the dense woods that framed the property. In the distance, headlights sliced through the dark like predators' eyes. They reached the tree line and ducked behind an old oak, catching their breath. The house erupted moments later, fire consuming everything they'd left behind. There goes our base, Vincent said grimly. And your father's files. Anna pulled the flash drive from her pocket, the metal warm against her palm. Not all of them. He looked at her, the faintest smile ghosting across his bruised face. You really are his daughter. For the next 2 days, they stayed on the move, cheap motels, stolen cars, cash only. The news feeds buzzed with chaos, investigations, leaks, arrests. The 5 families were in freefall. Half the city's underbelly was eating itself alive. And in the center of the storm, Anna felt something strange: control. For once, she wasn't the hunted girl or the grieving daughter. She was the hand that flipped the board. But victory came with noise. On the 3rd night, as they rested in a motel outside Albany, the TV flickered mid-broadcast. Static filled the screen, then a distorted voice cut through. Annie, can you hear me? Anna froze. Vincent straightened. That's not possible, he whispered. The image stabilized just long enough for them to see it. A man's face, older, pale, half lit by the glow of a bare bulb. "Annie," he said again, voice trembling. "They lied to you. I'm still here." Anna's breath hitched, her eyes flooding with disbelief. "Dad?" The screen fizzled back into static. Vincent lunged for the remote, flipping channels, but the signal was gone. Only silence remained. For a long time, neither moved. Then Anna whispered, almost to herself, "He's alive." Vincent met her gaze, and in that single look, both of them knew everything had just changed. Outside, thunder rolled over the horizon, the sound low and distant, like a warning from the world itself. The road into the Catskills was narrow and curved like a secret trying not to be found. Fog pooled along the shoulder, thick and low, swallowing the headlights as Anna drove in silence. Vincent sat beside her, still bruised from the last safe house attack, his body tense and quiet. Neither had spoken much since the motel, since the broadcast. Since her father's broken voice bled through static and confirmed the impossible, he's still alive. The GPS signal had cut out miles ago, but Vincent's memory guided them deeper into the woods. "We called it the Pines," he said softly, as if speaking louder would wake the dead. "Off-grid facility. On paper, it's a wellness retreat for the ultra-rich. In reality, it's where the board buries people too valuable to kill and too dangerous to leave free." Anna glanced at him. "And you're sure he's there?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "If he's anywhere, it's there." They parked beneath a thicket of trees, about a mile from the compound. The night air was sharp with pine and cold soil, and Anna zipped up her jacket as Vincent opened the trunk. Inside, black clothing, bolt cutters, 2 flashlights, and a small bag with everything Vincent called insurance. Anna clipped her hair back, pulled a scarf over her mouth, and met his eyes. "Let's go get him." They moved through the woods like shadows, navigating by dim red lights on their gear and memory alone. When they reached the edge of the compound, Anna stopped. Fences 10 feet high wrapped the facility like a cage. Beyond the gates sat a sprawling complex, white lights glowing over trimmed grass, polished glass walls, and soft music faintly drifting through open vents. "Looks like a resort," Anna whispered. "Exactly," Vincent replied. "That's how they hide it." They clipped through a section of fence where the wire sagged inward. Vincent guided her to a maintenance door along the east wing, partially hidden behind a row of shrubs. It had a keycard lock, but Vincent had prepared for that. 1 wire, 2 sparks, and a soft click later, they were inside. The hallway smelled of bleach and sterilized deception. Security cameras blinked from the corners, but Vincent knew their blind spots. They moved in silence, ducking beneath motion sensors and slipping past nurse stations. The facility was too clean, too perfect. And underneath that order pulsed something wrong, like the building itself held its breath. At the end of a quiet corridor, they reached a steel door labeled Observation Wing B. Anna's heart slammed against her ribs. "This is it," she whispered. Vincent entered a 6-digit override on the keypad, one of his old board codes, and the lock clicked open. Inside was a dim hallway lined with thick, reinforced doors, each one with a slot for food trays and a small viewing window. Anna passed them slowly, her breath fogging the glass as she peeked inside, an elderly man murmuring nonsense to a blank wall, a woman sitting motionless in a chair. Ghosts in silk pajamas. But then room 113. She stopped cold. Through the reinforced window, she saw him. Older. Gaunt. His hair was nearly white, thinner than she remembered. His shoulders were slumped, and he sat with his back to the door, scribbling in a notebook with a dull pencil. Her breath caught. That profile. That curve of his brow. The angle of his hand still the same. "Dad," she whispered. She tapped lightly on the glass. He flinched. Slowly, as if afraid to believe it, Jonathan Brooks turned. His eyes, dull, drugged, narrowed, then widened. A flicker of recognition surfaced from behind the fog. "Annie?" The word cracked from his lips like something pulled from a forgotten dream. Anna felt her knees go weak. She opened the food slot just wide enough to whisper, "It's me, Dad. I'm here." His steps were slow but steady. He knelt by the door, their hands pressed together on opposite sides of cold glass. Tears slid down Anna's face. We're getting you out. Right now. Vincent popped the electronic lock and the door groaned open. Jonathan blinked in confusion but didn't resist. Anna helped him to his feet, her arms steady beneath his. We have to move, Vincent said, checking the hallway. We've got about 2 minutes before the next sweep. But as they turned toward the exit, an alarm blared. Red lights splashed across the walls. Voices shouted over the intercom. Heavy boots hit the tile like hammers. They know we're here, Vincent growled. Go. I'll hold them. Anna froze. No, you have your father. You don't need me to. His voice was hard, urgent. Get him out, Anna. Jonathan gripped her hand weakly. What's happening? It's okay, she said, choking back panic. We're almost out. Vincent shoved a duffel into her free hand. West Wing utility exit. Follow the blue tape on the floor. She stared at him. Vincent, go, he barked, already pulling his weapon. Anna ran. Her feet pounded against tile. Behind her, shouts erupted, guards flooding the corridor. She clutched her father to her side, guiding him as best she could, following the blue tape. A burst of gunfire echoed behind them. Don't look back, she whispered. Just hold on. They reached the utility door. It took everything in her to force it open, the old hinges protesting. Outside, the woods were close. Alive. Free. She helped her father through the gap, then slipped after him, just as a gunshot cracked through the night. She turned, heart frozen. The facility's rear lights were blinking wildly, the emergency klaxons howling. Somewhere inside, Vincent was still fighting. Still holding them off. Still giving them time. And then another shot. Then silence. Anna stared at the door, willing him to burst through. To appear with that crooked smile and broken calm. But the trees remained still. Her father tugged at her hand weakly. Annie? She turned to him, blinking away the tears. We have to go, she whispered. We're not safe yet. They disappeared into the forest, darkness swallowing their trail. If someone sacrificed themselves so you could save the person you love, how far would you go to make sure it wasn't in vain? Leave your answer in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Anna's fight is far from over, and what comes next may cost more than she's ready to pay. The room smelled of antiseptic and cedar, a strange combination of sterile and safe. Jonathan lay on a hospital bed in a private clinic hidden deep in the Adirondacks, hooked to machines but breathing without aid now. Anna sat beside him, her fingers lightly wrapped around his. In the days since their escape from the pines, he'd said little, his mind still fighting the fog of a decade's worth of sedation. But when he whispered her name and smiled faintly, it was enough to assure her that some part of him had survived. Outside the clinic window, winter was setting in. Snow dusted the trees like powdered silence, the kind that muffled the world and made you feel like time had paused just for you. But for Anna, time had never moved faster. Every second since Vincent stayed behind had been laced with guilt, fury, and purpose. She'd told herself there had to be a reason he didn't make it out. Now she was going to make sure it meant something. She had the ledger. She had the flash drive, the recordings, the decrypted trails of money laundering, shell corporations, bribes, offshore accounts, and proof that D'Angelo Costa was at the center of it all. The system that had swallowed her father whole was hemorrhaging, thanks to the war she and Vincent had started. But without power to back it, information was just noise. She needed someone who could make it mean something. That someone was Marco Leone. Heir to the Leone syndicate and black sheep of the 5 families, Marco had spent the past 5 years quietly building his own network, one that didn't bleed the city dry, but ran it with calculated efficiency. Word on the street was that Marco had long grown tired of D'Angelo's reign. Tired of the old guard choking the future. And most importantly, unlike his father and the other dinosaurs still clinging to power, Marco had something rare in this world: vision. Anna arranged the meeting through a mutual contact of Vincent's, an old consigliere named Romano who now ran a bookshop in Brooklyn. She gave no details. Just a time, a place, and a name. Tell Marco I have the truth. And that I have something D'Angelo will kill to keep buried. Romano made the call. The meeting was set. They met in the back room of a shuttered jazz club in Red Hook, surrounded by dusty bottles of gin and photographs yellowed with age. Marco arrived in a gray wool coat, gloves still damp from the snow, and eyes that scanned the room like they'd been trained to see through lies. He was in his mid-30s, sharp-jawed, and too calm for someone who'd likely ordered executions before breakfast. Anna didn't flinch. "You're the girl with the ledger," he said, taking the seat across from her. "And you're the man who wants the crown," she replied. A ghost of a smirk touched his lips. "I already have power. What I need is leverage." Anna unzipped the bag beside her and pulled out a thick folder. "Then let's trade." She laid it out piece by piece: the ledger, the USB drive, the decrypted files from her father's journals, the anonymous server logs that traced D'Angelo's financial network across 4 continents. Finally, the grainy video file, the one from the pines, the flickering image of her father whispering from the dark. "This is everything," she said. "Proof that D'Angelo has been hiding prisoners, killing whistleblowers, funneling billions into black ops, all while the rest of you think he's just old and greedy." Marco sat in silence, flipping through the documents. He said nothing for 10 minutes, which felt like a lifetime to Anna. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "What do you want?" She met his eyes. "Immunity. For me and my father. Protection. And D'Angelo gone." He studied her carefully. "That's not a small ask." "Neither is dismantling a dynasty," she said. "But you're not like the others. You want something cleaner, leaner. A version of the Mafia that doesn't have to hide in shadows or burn hospitals to keep its secrets." He tilted his head, intrigued. "And what do you want when this is over?" Anna's gaze didn't waver. "I want to stop running." The deal was struck over coffee and cold silence. Within 24 hours, the first purge began. Marco moved swiftly and mercilessly. He didn't strike D'Angelo directly, not yet. Instead, he dismantled the infrastructure first. Warehouse seizures, frozen assets, public humiliations disguised as tax raids and cooperative arrests. The old guard fell like dominoes, scrambling to hide, defect, or deny. D'Angelo retaliated with violence, bombings, assassinations, an attempted hit on Marco's second-in-command. But Marco's machine was faster, more precise, more surgical. By the end of the week, half of D'Angelo's crew had either disappeared or switched sides. The board, once untouchable, was now fractured beyond repair. Anna watched it unfold from the safe house, her father slowly recovering under round-the-clock care. He spoke more now, still in fragments, but clearer each day. He told her about numbers, about code, about how he used the rhythm of his heartbeat to hide encryption keys in accounting lines. But he hadn't yet spoken about the pines, or the years in between. Anna didn't press. Some wounds needed silence to scab. Vincent's name was never found among the bodies. No report. No confirmation. Just absence. Some said he died in the blaze. Others claimed they saw him in Argentina, limping through a market with a cigarette and a limp. Anna didn't believe in ghosts. But she believed in Vincent. And she believed he would have wanted her to finish what they started. A week later, Romano returned to the clinic with a package. "From Marco," he said, handing her a plain manila envelope. Inside was a typed document, a signed immunity agreement with Marco's seal, guaranteeing her and her father full protection under the Leone family's new structure. "You're done," Romano said. "You can walk away now." Anna stared at the page. The war was over. But her hands still shook. Later that night, as she sat by her father's bedside, she found a smaller envelope tucked inside the package. No return address. Just her name written in neat, elegant handwriting. Her breath caught as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, slightly singed at the edges. The letter read, "Annie, you asked once why I stayed behind. I never got to answer. Some men do unforgivable things. Some disappear because they want to be forgotten. But me, I was looking for something to redeem the worst in me. You were that something. You always were." Anna folded the letter slowly, her chest tight, her eyes glassy. She didn't cry. She just sat there, holding the weight of the words in her lap like a final gift. The war was over. But the story wasn't. Not yet. The hills of Umbria rolled like ancient breaths, draped in olive groves and vineyards that shimmered in the early light. Anna walked the narrow gravel path behind the small stone villa, her boots crunching against the earth, the air crisp with dew and silence. The villa sat at the edge of the village, its shutters painted in a faded green, its windows wide open to the sound of birdsong and bells from a nearby church. No guards. No whispers. Just the soft hum of a world that had finally forgotten her name. She went by a different name now, Alessia Bianchi, if anyone asked. The passport was real enough, purchased through one of Marco's quieter channels. Her father was Giovanni, a retired professor. No one in the village questioned why they rarely left their home, why they paid in cash, why they had no family visiting. Italy, for all its beauty, understood the art of letting secrets settle like dust. Inside the villa, Jonathan sat in the sunroom with a cup of herbal tea trembling in his hands. His mind still wavered like morning mist, moments of clarity followed by long silences, as if memory were a fragile signal trying to cut through static. But each day, something more returned. He remembered the name of the coffee he used to drink, the formula he once wrote on a napkin in Brooklyn. And sometimes, in the quietest moments, he remembered Anna. That morning, she found him watching the horizon. "They grow grapes like numbers," he said softly. "Tidy rows. No room for chaos." She smiled and sat beside him. "You used to say numbers were the only honest language." He nodded, gaze distant. "I used to believe a lot of things." They had been in Umbria for 3 months now. No sightings. No calls. Marco had kept his word, the immunity held, the safe house stayed invisible, and no shadow crossed their door. Sometimes, Anna would walk into town and speak with the baker, buy fresh figs from the open market, listen to music play in the square, and feel something like normal. Other days, she stayed inside with her father, going through the few journals he'd managed to preserve in his fog, piecing together the man she used to know. It was on one of those still days that the package arrived. No postage. No return address. Just a small wooden box, sealed with a strip of wax and her name carved delicately into the lid. She opened it slowly, the scent of old paper rising like incense. Inside was the original ledger, the very one Vincent had once slid across the white tablecloth at La Serenissima. Untouched. Unburned. Preserved like a relic. Atop it, a single note. "You were never invisible. You were always the future. V." Her breath caught. She traced the signature with her fingertip, the ink bold but unmistakably his. Vincent. Somehow, somewhere, he had survived. She didn't know how. Or where. But she knew this. Ghosts don't send mail unless they want to be remembered. She carried the ledger to her father's room. He was sitting by the window again, sketching in a notebook, the pencil lines shaky but determined. She placed the ledger in his lap. He stared at it for a long time before speaking. "I wrote that with a broken pen in 2009, he murmured. "And a piece of my soul." Anna knelt beside him, her voice low. "Do you remember what it meant?" He turned a page and ran his fingers over the lines. "It meant I still believed in numbers. Even when I stopped believing in people." His hand trembled slightly as he flipped the next page. "But I was wrong. I should have believed in you." Later that evening, they walked the vineyard path together, the sun folding itself into the hills like an old promise. Anna watched the light paint gold across the leaves, the earth rich and quiet beneath their feet. Her father moved slowly, but with more steadiness than before, his steps syncing with hers in a rhythm they hadn't shared since she was 10 years old. She didn't ask if he remembered everything. She didn't need to. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice warm but clear. "We've got time now." He smiled, tired but true, and they kept walking. And in the ruins of a life stolen by fear, Anna Brooks built a future her father once dreamed of, in peace, in truth, and finally, in freedom. Thank you for listening to this story until the very end. There's another interesting one on your left screen that I think you'll really enjoy.